we're not going to spend too much time on all of these shows, but just on the CM Punk Ricky Starks match, how you felt about that, and especially the crowd reaction to Punk, and conversely, Punk's reaction to the crowd.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if he would have expected that type of reaction in Calgary, just given, Hamilton was pretty soft. Like, from what I recall, Regina seemed to be pretty neutral or pro Punk.
Mm-hmm.
But in Calgary, it was pretty hostile, or at least definitely more pro Starks than it was pro Punk. And
Did
I
that
don't
surprise
know.
you?
It did surprise me because I don't know if it was just something I think would have only happened in maybe a Toronto, but maybe just because more so he's such a Brett guy, I thought Calgary would be with him, but clearly that's not enough. And I think they have to really be considering further options for CM Punk as a heel right now, which maybe is not happening because they decided to do it with Starks, but.
That match was completely laid out for CM Punk to be the babyface, and I'd say that match it gave me a further or a deeper appreciation of John Cena in those situations, that he was able to go in front of those hostile crowds, and it would be so much he would play to that audience that wanted to hate him, but would also not abandon his core fans that are still watching John Cena, their superhero. And he thrived in those settings, really thrived. And they were some of the more memorable John Cena matches where he knew how to work those crowds. And a lot of baby faces would get thrown off by the crowd turning on it, whether it be Dusty when it was late into his run in Jim Crockett Promotions, or Shawn Michaels in the mid-90s. And Punk was certainly, I don't think, rattled by it, but at the same time, I don't think he was fully able to really take this and turn it into a positive for the match. It was more so, I think, him trying to win the crowd back. And this was an audience that was pretty adamantly it wasn't 100%, but it felt like 60-40 against him at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it is a bigger question. As we see these, Toronto, you can maybe just assume going into Calgary that Toronto, it's a unique crowd and they went against Punk. That's going to be a rarity. But Calgary was more of a surprise. And is this indicative of other big crowds? Next week, they're in Newark, New Jersey, which is, that's the Prudential Center. And while they're not going to sell out the Prudential Center, you would hope that you're going to have a healthy crowd there. What's the reaction going to be like in a Northeast town in the U.S. next week? And I do think there is this gap between an audience that wants to vociferously hate this guy, but it's almost like they're not allowed to. And it's the audience that supports him is sort of in this limbo too. It's the elephant is in the room with him, and it's taking on a life of its own now with the crowds that I think are going to mimic Calgary and Toronto.
Well, at this point, we have to ask, what are sort of the negatives of actually turning Punk heel? Why not run with it rather than, play this game of trying to guess whether or not this particular crowd is going to boo Punk or cheer Punk, and you're going to have to change course. Why not just run with him as a heel throughout the entire country? I certainly don't see the drawback. And you know what? If it calls to a bigger question, and I think it's that for the most part, CM Punk still seems like the bad guy in this entire brawl out situation. And there's a lot that I think the audience feels he hasn't necessarily answered for. And whatever you feel about the situation at this point, so what? All we really care about is just the on-air product, and why run against the go against the grain? Why not just have Punk be a heel?
Well, I think it's one thing to turn him, but if you're not doing the program everyone wants, is that really the most valuable? You're turning him, but you're not doing the program that everyone essentially wants. I think,
but you don't have to do. Well, I mean, we never got Brett versus Vince until after Brett came back, of course. But I mean, we did not get
Brett and Vince weren't on Raw and SmackDown every week.
But but Brett was in WCW and Vince was in WWE, and instead we got as a surrogate of Bret Hart, Stone Cold Steve Austin. You could definitely put somebody else in that role on Collision to face off against a heel CM Punk.
Well, I think they're going to continue to ride this. I think with Punk in this role, but I think it was interesting just to see that whole reaction and how it continues in the they are still booking big venues for Collision, and we're going to see as well. It was a healthy crowd in Calgary, but Newark for next Saturday. I mean, all they've announced so far is the Trios Championship match, and that's that's a big building that they have to have on next Saturday night.
Ratings are going to be really important for last Saturday, and also especially this coming Saturday. Without perhaps something as big as CM Punk versus Samoa Joe, or CM Punk in the finals of the Owen Hart tournament, what are they going to announce? That is this going to be a tapering of interest for Collision? This is every single week is important for Collision ratings.
Yeah, and we'll get a very interesting pattern on Saturday of how that 1 hour match does to hold people up for the first hour as well.